Hey, good morning, everyone. We're about to get started. If we can silence our cell phones, and if somebody would be so kind to close the back door, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, we are on the record. Today is Monday, the 10th day of July, year 2023. This is a City Council caucus meeting of the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 10 a.m. start, and the clock on my cell phone is showing 10:08 a.m. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this caucus? Councilperson Ridley.
Here.
Councilperson Prinzary.
Here.
Councilperson Baggiano.
Yeah.
Councilperson Saleh.
Here.
Councilperson Solomon.
Here.
Councilperson Gilmore is here, but will be not here at the moment, but he'll be back. And Councilperson DeJeece. Councilperson Rivera and Council President Waterman are not here and will not be here for the council meeting either. So right now, we have 6 council members in attendance at 10:08 a.m. On behalf of Council President and members of the Municipal Council, in accordance with New Jersey Public Laws of 1975, Chapter 231, the Open Public Meetings Act, also known as the Sunshine Law, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the posting on the bulletin board of the first floor, City Hall. The annual notice, which is the schedule of meetings and caucuses of the Municipal Council for the calendar year 2023, and filed in the office of the City Clerk on Thursday, December 15, 2022. In addition, at its time of its preparation, the agenda of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Friday, July 7th, 2023 at 1 p.m. to the mayor, municipal council, business administrator, corporation council, and local newspapers, and posted on the city's website, so I can certify as to our total compliance with the Sunshine Law. And I just want to mark Councilperson Gilmore present at 10:09 a.m. So we now have 7 council members present at 10:09 a.m. First director up is Director Shea.
Good morning, council members. The Department of Public Safety has 4 resolutions on the agenda this morning. The first one is agenda number 10.11, resolution 23534 to purchase hoses for our fire trucks from AAA Emergency Supply. It's in the amount of $30,268. And this is just a routine replacement of our fire hoses as they are declared obsolete.
Any questions?
Lifespan for a hose?
Pardon me?
What's the average lifespan for a hose?
I'll have to get you that. I do know they have to be inspected. You know, all this is covered by OSHA and state regulations. They have to be inspected on a regular basis. And if there's any wear and tear that might affect the performance, they have to be taken out of service.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Next.
Next, item 10-12 or .12, resolution 23535. This is Public Safety Division of Police leasing 30 Ford Interceptors for the next 5 years. That's Ford Explorers. These are the marked cars that'll replace the marked cars that are in the fleet now. They're all reaching end of life. This lease will take 5 years and then we own them at the end. But in reality, 5 years is about since they run 24/7, 5 years is about the useful life of these vehicles anyway.
Any questions? Next.
Next, 10.13, 23536. This is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Tomahawk Defense for the purchase and delivery of Cry Precision pants, shirts, and knee pads for the emergency service unit. It's in the amount of $30,975.56. This is the one that I held one-on-one meetings with a lot of people about. Our emergency service unit wears that heavier body armor. They require this uniform so that they can wear it for a full 8-hour shift. It has that breathable things instead of their regular uniform. It's taken us quite a while to get here, and I thank you all for your patience because I know it's been about a year since we had those meetings and the resolution didn't come up until now. I think for various reasons, making sure that it complied with all the diversity things and everything else. But it did. It's through a co-op. This is the price. There's no deviation on this price. This is what you pay for them.
Any questions?
And then finally, and connected to that, agenda number 10.14 is a resolution authorizing a contract to Tomahawk to purchase and deliver exfil ballistic helmet rails through the New York Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Alliance. That's the helmets and the rails for the microphones so they can talk to each other. Again, this is the emergency service equipment we talked about. And what happened here is our helmets are at the end of useful life. So we have to, this is a routine replacement every 5 years. Those helmets have to be replaced. What we do with the old ones, because I'm sure someone's going to ask, they are still good and they're better than nothing. So we will put them out in the regular cars in case, God forbid, our officers see another 1210. But our emergency service unit, who's the prime unit that deals with something like that, we make sure that their stuff is always up to date and within warranty.
Any questions? Thank you, Director.
Thank you, council members.
Next Director, Director Kears.
Hi, council members. I have two items. First being 23-550, 1027. Resolution will authorize the award of a contract to Sherwin-Williams Company for the purchase and delivery of paint and related supplies for the de-escalation pistol range. Total amount of this contract is $25,000 and is funded through the DPW capital account.
Any questions?
Next is 23-551, 1028. Resolution will award a contract to Lampley Landscaping and Snow Removal to provide landscaping and cleaning services for 26 city properties. Total amount of this contract is $18,525 with a temporary encumbrance of $5,000. Project is funded through the DPW account, capital account.
Is this an ongoing contract that we're renewing, or is this a new service?
Yes, that's correct.
It's an ongoing contract?
Yes.
Okay. And have we added any locations to this contract, or is it the same?
No, it's still the same, council. And, our people supplement them as need be, mostly for snow operations, but this is for primary grass cutting and things like that. And it's vice versa. They supplement us, we supplement them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Director. Next, Tanya.
I am here for two items. One is 3.4 and the other is second reading for Venus Pelagati designation. At least for 3.4, which is our phase 2. Can you guys everybody hear me? Yep, great. For our phase 2 master plan implementation for zoning changes, we've tried to meet with as many council people individually as possible. I know the last month has been very difficult with schedules, so had the chance to sit down and walk you through these changes specifically. I apologize. As an overall idea of what's happening, and I think the easiest way to kind of go through and explain what the basis of the changes are is to kind of go through, and you're going to have to bear with me, and it's 10 a.m. on Monday. The history of Jersey City. Are you ready? Here we go. Right? In the late 1800s, early 1900s, folks immigrate to Jersey City. They come here from Europe. They also are coming because of the Industrial Revolution, right? The cities benefited from the Industrial Revolution because all of the industrial buildings and uses were in the cities. So in 1910, between 1910 and 1950, we have two huge waves of immigration specifically to the cities. One is definitely the European immigrants as a result of World War I, seeking just safety, but also seeking jobs, the chance to have economic gain. And the other is a lot of the Black population that was in the South. There's two huge waves of Black population in the South, early 1900s and mid 1900s, right? So the folks that came to Jersey City were primarily down Route 95, right? So if you think about how people actually immigrate or how people try to get to place, it's the most direct route. So a lot of the Black folks from Jersey City are from the Georgia area, South Carolina, North Carolina. This happens all over the country, right? The folks who are from Mississippi are the ones going up to Chicago. Some of them eventually also go up to Harlem. There's a couple of things that are happening in cities, and there's huge economic growth. But at the same time, this same time is the advent of zoning. Any idea why? The advent of
The red
zoning,
line.
one, right? Industry was there, and so we thought this is the good time to separate the uses. People shouldn't be living in the same buildings or areas as there was the industry. But the folks who were living there, because there was such a housing shortage, were the folks who were the new immigrants. They were living in things called kitchenettes. And very similar to today, they live in very small spaces where the rent was still higher per square foot than the huge apartments that were on Central Avenue and the people who had benefited from the original migration to the United States. So after that, they start building more housing, right? But at the same time that's happening, while zoning is being changed, the basis of zoning is mainly racial covenants, right? We don't want people in certain neighborhoods. So after the racial covenants and the beginning of zoning, World War II happens, right? And then what happens after World War II? It's a huge moment of economic prosperity, right? We had the Great Depression, then we go to World War II, and the veterans who were coming home were getting the ticket to buy houses in these places where they were finally building up housing because the housing was, we're having such a shortage of housing that they were taking these old mass farms or whatever it was, all those areas of unbuilt and building these huge suburban areas, right? If you've ever been to Levittown, it's like being in one of those movies where you feel like everybody's going to come out at the end and I don't know, whatever that Stepford thing is, right? But the only people who were getting those tickets to those houses were people that looked like me, but men, right? Not people who didn't look like me were stuck in the same place in the city and they weren't able to move out and they weren't able to build that wealth and that asset, but they were able to move into the places where white people left. And in Jersey City, that's a move south and west. And then let's fast forward a little bit further to the 70s, the 80s, right? We have the U.S. Immigration Act of 1965. Why is that important? The U.S. Immigration Act of 1965 finally gets rid of the quota for nationalities, which means that there's a huge influx of immigrants into the cities, particularly, or the United States, of people who are from other continents, right? So now we have, in New Jersey City, you can see this, we have a huge influx of folks who are from all of our Asian continents and from Iran and from all of these places where it was difficult because of quotas to get here before. And where are they moving? They're moving into the same neighborhoods and the same areas where people were fleeing. So there's this conversation that is had, right, about people who are able to move on, buy new places, build new equity, and the places that were kind of left behind. You can say that the people who moved into the places that were left behind got a discount, but that's not the truth, right? The people who got left behind didn't get a discount. Most of the time, those people were being charged double than they would have by their white counterpart. And then the land itself, the area itself was devalued, right? And so after the devaluation and the result of now we're in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and we're looking at the deindustrialization of the entire United States. Cities like Jersey City, we keep hearing the story of Detroit, that lived on industry are now dying. And now we're losing the rest of the population who are moving out, continuing building their wealth. And the people that are left here are now left without jobs. They're left with lower economic resources. But what industry grows at this time? The 80s, the 90s, think of Ronald Reagan and the Wolf of Wall Street, industry, economic growth in New York City. So the people who are moving into here are the people who are probably working over in New York City, and they're infilling the places downtown, closer to the path, coming in quickly. at that whole time, you still have zoning going on, right? There's a whole other thing that government does, right? So government's always a little bit late to the scene, right? We start building public housing in the 60s and the 70s to make up for the housing shortage that was there 30 years ago. We've taken over, kind of decimated neighborhoods in order to build some of that public housing. And then after the 30 years, some of that public housing itself, it starts to wear down and there's not the resources there. Why aren't the resources there? Because the tax base has left, right? The tax base leaves Jersey City, or the higher tax base leaves Jersey City, the jobs and the economic growth from the 1970s all the way probably to the 1990s. If you haven't, if I made the false presumption that there were no race riots in Jersey City, but there were. In the 1960s and the mid 1960s, there were plenty of race riots. All the conversations that were happening in the cities throughout the United States were also happening here. Why is that important? Why am I telling you these things? Because the other side of all of the things that are always happening is what the government is doing in order to, I don't know, make it better, control it. I'm not really sure. So we start writing the zoning that looks like in the 1960s and 70s, urban renewal, right? It takes over those neighborhoods, it builds up the housing projects, or if you're looking at places like Ocean Avenue, where a ton of the white population now has moved out to the suburbs, and the folks that are left there with the vacant buildings and or the people who are not white people, these neighborhoods are completely decimated and housing is built up. At the same time, that housing is great because we need the opportunity to continue to build home ownership. But it took out neighborhoods that were mixed use communities. The story of Jersey City, why it's so important, is that we've never really had that, we've never had 1 and 2 family zoning. We've had small pockets of mixed use communities and immigrant communities that have come over from all over and have found their pocket neighborhoods. That's also the history of the development of Jersey City itself. We always say that it was 5 different cities, but that story continues on and on for decades. In 1990, not even my predecessor, but he was my mentor and he was the one who took me in. Bob Cotter was zoning at the time where redevelopment was still very prevalent. Redevelopment is still very prevalent, but they were looking at redevelopment for areas that were industrial, that were nothing, almost like wastelands. And so when they started making the zoning for the things at downtown, which by the way worked, right? We look at our census that just came in, we had 30,000 new people, not even rehabs or people that filled in, 30,000 new people, because we were able to build all of those new buildings in the areas that were wastelands, industrial, vacant land. At the same time, when they were doing that, the conversation with the people who lived within the residential areas was to cap zoning. So those neighborhoods, the R1s, we call them, right? They were never R1s, they were R2s or something. Again, never just 1 and 2 family zoning, but always zoned by density, where there was always a mix of apartments and always a mix of different folks who lived on the block, different tenants, whether they were renters or homeowners. All of this because when we were doing the phase 2 zoning, I think we all started out with the presumption that the R1 always gets a lot of use variances. We need to fix it. But that's not the story at all, right? The R1 does get a lot of use variances. And it's because over the last 20 years, we've tried to make the R1 something that it isn't necessarily. And we've just continued to put on Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid, right? So the changes before you to the R1 are specific to attempting to kind of fix some of the problems that have happened over the last 20 years that are very specific to the R1. Let's talk about some of them. Some of them are your passion issues, I know, because you've spoken to me about them. Mass demolition, right? So it took us 20 years to realize that mass demolition might be happening because it was so easy to take down a house that was built in the 50s, the 40s, and put up a garage instead. So one of the changes that we made is for lots that were 25 feet or less, in Ward C and Ward D, we're not allowed to build parking. That's in order to stem demolition. That is not what we are proposing in the rest of the wards. What else are we proposing? We wanted to, as a result of that, incentives for rehabilitation. The demolition ordinance is probably the most aggressive demolition ordinance that there is in the state, right? It doesn't seem like that because there's a lot of houses that get demolished in Jersey City all of the time. So in order to not just give those people the denial that says your house is insignificant because it doesn't meet these federal standards, we're now incentivizing them to keep their house by giving a couple of extra units in order to fund the rehabilitation. We're taking away the 1 and 2 unit use, and we're putting it a density standard instead. So the conversations of I have a bigger lot are stemmed by the fact that instead of having to go for a use variance, they'll be able to put the number of units on that match that density, which is historically how it always was. We also started looking at the fact that we listened to people and they said, we've got this huge building in our backyard. The zoning that was put into place, we call it the moving back and forth. The front plus the rear yard has to equal 35. What it did was it continued to create a building that was going to be 65 feet long no matter what you did. Before 2000, the zoning was a percentage in the rear yard. The front yard was always predominant, but the rear yard was always a percentage, which means that you're going to have buildings that are more compatible with the neighboring buildings. You're not going to have a building that will be able to just have a 20-foot rear yard because they have a 15-foot rear yard, a 15-foot front yard because sometime in the 60s, that was the zoning, right? A lot of this is what you see on Webster Avenue. Webster Avenue is a great example. There's all of those old houses that are on the 0 lot line, but when we start taking those houses down in the 50s and the 60s, we push them back 15 feet, we put the cars in front. That's some of the conditions that we're using. We also heard you, surface parking. So now we're permitting surface parking in the R1 zone. Some of the requirements that we put as it's a conditional use is that you have to provide public parking, you have to have EV charging stations, and you have to have landscaping. Those lots are also going to be registered with Division of Commerce, so they'll also be taxed appropriately. Let's see, I'm sure I'm missing something. The height standard, right? So part of the height standard, you see buildings that look, I think, incredibly out of place. There's a couple of things that are happening there. One of them is that our zoning now allows for a 44-foot high building in the R1 as a 1 and 2 family. And that's because we do it from the floor to ceiling, right? You can go up to 12 feet from floor to ceiling. So when you're walking by, you see a 12-foot high garage door. So we did 2 things. One, we lowered it to 35. That's it. And the second thing we did was we created design standards. They're not just design standards, right? They're design regulations. There are design standards in the code today. They're just not heavily enforced. And most of the things that come to the planning or zoning board are not going to be in the 1 and 2 family housing. So now we made it stronger in their regulations. That ground floor has to match up with the ground floor of the buildings with on the block. If you have a porch, you have to have a porch. If you have a stoop, you have to have a stoop. You have to be more in context to what the rest of the block looks like. We allowed for kind of an opening for corner commercial. We originally, as part of the master plan, was to allow commercial in garages, to allow commercial in every corner. And we got a huge pushback from that. So we listened and we responded to corner commercial being a conditional use and only in places where there was commercial in the 1930s and that commercial use was removed and made residential, or you have commercial on the block at the other end of the block and it's prevalent within the neighborhood. We are also doing some zone changes that we worked with Councilwoman Prenzere on pretty extensively over the last probably at this point 2 years. Municipal Avenue, and I know that there's some sensitivity to the fact that there's commercial automotive and just regular small businessmen who have their auto service shops that have over time have just flourished. But unfortunately, Municipal Avenue, the result is that we have a lot of traffic backup and a lot of pedestrian things that are not safe anymore. So we've expanded the commercial automotive uses to places where they might make more sense. Tonnelle Avenue, Route 440, even some of the redevelopment plans where there were old industrial buildings, we've allowed for interim uses so that some of the uses on Communipal can now go to those interim uses. And they have up to 10 years to do that. The interim uses are allowed to be there for 10 years, which is pretty significant. I'm sure I'm missing something, but those are really like the core. Oh, yes. Right. And so we are now also proposing ADUs. Let's talk about that. Okay. So ADU is a national conversation that's happening. It's happening everywhere. And everybody is thinking that the ADUs are the solve to housing affordability, housing shortage. They might be great in places where you're in the suburbs, you're in Montclair, you're in somewhere where the zoning is always capped at a very low density. Some of the towns have 5 units an acre, right? And so that's like we have at our lowest right now 35 units an acre, and it's an implied density. So there's a couple of things. Those places in Montclair and all of these other suburbs, their lots are at least 50 feet wide, maybe 50 feet deep, maybe 100 feet deep. Our lots are on average 25 feet wide, 100 feet deep. Actually, the depth in Jersey City is very all over the place. It's pretty consistent that you might have 25, especially within the south and the west development of Jersey City, but that your lot might be shorter. So in order to have an ADU, it's a conditional use. It has to be a separate structure, right? So think about your garage and think about putting another story above your garage. But there are limits to it. First of all, just in limits for the ones that we've built in, it can only be 18 feet, 2 stories. It has to meet the building coverage and the lot coverage. So you're not looking at a building that's going to be covering the entirety of the rear, probably a building that's not going to be able to be increased that much at all. Because at the same time, we've also lowered the lot coverage in this round as a response to what we were hearing about runoff, things like that. The building code will greatly limit the ability for Jersey City to probably have ADUs. So 2 things need to happen. There needs to be a free flow from that building, from that accessory dwelling unit to the right of way. And it has to have at least 3 feet, 1 inches. So if you've got a garage in the rear, but your building takes up the entirety of the 25-foot lot, there is no ADU for you. If you have to go from your garage or your rear structure through another building to get to the front, it doesn't meet building code. That's the end of the conversation. If you have a garage and now you just want to put your unit on the 2nd floor, according to the building code, you have to have an external stair that comes from that 2nd floor to that ground floor. So already now you're looking at building and lot coverage, especially if you want to keep the ground floor for storage. So those are some of the things. I understand that there's been a lot of conversation about it, but I kind of want to tamper down the conversation based on the realities of what will actually happen with that. And I think that is the gist of everything that is before you. This is a primarily restructuring of the R1, which again has taken 20 years to get to be what it is today. We are taking a lot of the standards that are there and bringing them back, honestly, to what was more prevalent that was happening in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And the other side to this is, of course, I'm sure some of you have been there with us. We've done walking ward tours. We've done in-person ward tours. Even when we were doing phase 1, we started having a conversation about this because we knew it would be a difficult conversation because the R1 is 70% of the city. That's it. That was more than you bargained for, but it's 10 a.m. on Monday and I'm ready and awake, so.
Okay, council members, that was a lot to absorb. So do we have any questions? No questions.
Oh, no.
There are questions.
Question. Right. We also have another month before the next meeting, so if you'd like to meet with me or Matt, just email us. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Professor.
Sean.
Director.
So no, I have questions. Sorry.
Oh,
I thought I was.
Tanya. Tanya,
Sorry, Tanya. Sorry. Councilman, do you have a question or?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry, Tanya, so for the changes to R1.
Yep.
Just sort of a practical perspective, currently, obviously, the sort of Bayonne box is built. Would that be permitted with these changes? What do you expect to happen with sort of new development in the state places that are staying R1, but with the amendments to them?
So I think hopefully the first thing that will happen is less demolition. And that'll be because either A, they're not allowed to build a garage.
Right.
Or B, they got a letter that says they can't take it down, but now they have incentive to properly rehab it. If a new building does come, I think the next result will be a building that's more in contact with the rest of the block. So that's going to be a lower, kind of first floor that has, like I said, maybe their porches, maybe their stoops. I call it the stairway to heaven. The stairway to heaven is no longer a thing that's going to be happening because we've also changed some of the step backs and encroachments. We did that in phase 1. And then the other thing is materiality, right? So if you're on a block where there are mostly vinyl siding, we're going to be expecting you to put siding on your building. If you're on a block where there's mostly peaked roofs, we're going to be expecting you to put a peaked roof. Just to have context, and we're not trying to kill creativity,
Right.
but we are trying to complement the existing neighborhoods.
Got it. And then the height, it changed, but can you just sort of outline exactly how the height requirements changed?
Yep. So there was in the first round of the R1, it was pretty much in 2000, 30 feet and 35 feet if you have a peaked roof. But over time, people wanted higher floor to ceilings. And so the height changes on a higher floor to ceiling. So if you're going to do 12-foot floor to ceilings on each floor, you basically have a 44-foot building. I even know the origination of it. Councilman Catalano said to Claire, "What does that look like?" And she wrote in the chart. What it inadvertently did is because of zoning law, it allowed buildings up to 44 feet, only requiring a C variance. If you have a 44-foot building and you're not doing 12-foot floor to ceilings, you're doing a 4-story building, most likely. So this is a way to rein that in back to the 3 stories. We still think 35 feet gives you enough room to build a reasonably floor to ceiling height building.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And then in downtown, the one major change is I think these OR districts going to NC3.
Yep.
Do you know what was permitted in the OR for those 2 lots that are rezoned?
Yeah, 10 stories, 100 feet, and I believe it's 150 units an acre. But the uses, I believe, could be almost anything.
Got it.
So we also are doing, we did this in the first phase. We're doing a restructuring. So when you're looking at our table of contents, it makes sense, right? So previously, as you know, the R5 was downtown in the village, but it was actually a 3-story, 4-story neighborhood, whereas like the R4 is a 10-story neighborhood. We restructured it. The R1s are all in order now. The RH replaces the R1A and the R1F, and those are our large lot zonings. We've also created the RH2, which really talks about large lot zonings, but maybe not necessarily 30 or 40 feet wide, but maybe a lot longer, like the things that you see on Sherman Place. And then the NC1, 2, and 3. The NC1 will stay as it is. The NC2 is slightly larger for Communipaw Avenue, and the NC3 is replacing the old CBD and OR zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Sean,
Thank you.
Yes,
shouldn't Amy be running this meeting?
what's that?
Shouldn't Amy be running this meeting?
So I volunteered to run the caucus meeting, and we're going to have a discussion a little later about the council meeting on Wednesday night. Okay, with that being said, next, Director McLaughlin.
I'm not here to help you learn anything. Good news. I come before you, council members, on on item number 10.10, which is resolution 23-533. It is a resolution to permit the Department of Recreation and Youth Development to enter into a contract with the Hudson County Schools of Technology for busing for our camp program to get the kids to various activities, including swimming.
Any questions? Council.
know how many registered, how many registered camp participants do we have so far?
402.
402?
Sir.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director. Next, Jennifer Wong.
I have 4 items today, 2 for traffic engineering and 2 for the Division of Engineering. I will do the 2 for traffic engineering first. So item number 3.3, ordinance 2375. This is an ordinance to designate street cleaning on North Street between Tonelli Ave and Terrace Ave. Currently, it ends at Terrace Avenue, and we're just extending it to Tonelli Ave. This is a request from the residents. Okay. The next one is item 10.26, resolution 23549. This is a resolution to repeal 2 bus stops on Columbus Drive. This is the bus stop near side eastbound at Barrow and near side eastbound at Marin Boulevard. And this is just to consolidate the bus stops. Those 2 particular bus stops have low ridership, and this would efficiently improve the capacity on Columbus Drive.
Any questions? Okay, next.
Okay, now I'm going to go over the Division of Engineering items. 10.1, Resolution 23524. This is a resolution to authorize the cancellation of the unexpended budget and appropriation balance for the Transit Village grant. We were not able to use the funds in time for fiscal year 2021, but we did anticipate this and we reapplied and already received funding for fiscal year 2022.
Do we know why, this says unforeseen circumstance, doesn't really iron out why we weren't able to.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
That's all, okay. Do we know why we weren't able to use the funds?
Yes, there were several underground utility upgrades that needed to be completed before the project could be completed. And we're anticipated to break ground this fall. This is for Bergen Square.
Any other questions?
If was that the last one?
One more.
Okay, I'll wait till you finish.
Next item.
Go ahead.
Last one is item 1025, resolution 23548. This is a resolution authorizing the approval to submit a grant application for Columbus Drive. We already have phase 1 and we're looking to apply for phase 2 for the grant. This is similar to the 2-year grant that we have for Caven Point. So similar scope, it's a full streetscape, roadway, sidewalk, and bike improvements.
Any questions? Good. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jasmine?
Yeah, I've spoken to you, I've spoken to Paul, and I just want to remind you, enough with the street closings all at once. It is getting out of hand. Baldwin Avenue, Sip Avenue, Journal Square, Pavonia Avenue, Newark, can't continue like this.
I agree.
It just can't continue. And people are really upset up in this whole area in Ward C. And believe me, there's going to be a reaction to this. And I know they want to close Baldwin Avenue Part. The traffic is not going to come down Magnolia, not the hundreds and hundreds of cars. So please, tell who's ever given out all these permits at once, tell them to stop it. Okay? All right, Jennifer, thank you.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Jennifer, on 4.1, we discussed it during right before the last meeting. We were supposed to get information from traffic and engineering, but we never received that information. I'm going to ask that we carry it again this meeting until we can get that information or sit down and have a meeting with some of the residents so we can figure out what we're doing in general with Chapel Avenue.
Absolutely, yeah. And I can get you that information this week.
Thank you.
We're still collecting and summarizing that information.
Thank you.
Of course, no problem.
Councilwoman, are we looking to hold a public hearing or are we going to carry it?
No, we're just going to carry it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Jennifer? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Spears.
My name is James Spires. I'm a project manager in the Division of Community Development. Can you hear me now? Better.
Just lift it up to you. Yeah,
There we
lift it
go.
up to you.
My name is James Spires. I'm a project manager in the Division of Community Development, and I have 4 agenda items today authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement with different organizations and nonprofits in Jersey City. The first agenda item is 10.21, resolution number 23544, to authorize a subrecipient agreement with the Department of Recreation and Youth Development to rehabilitate 21 parks throughout Jersey City. And that one is the amount of $846,550.25.
What number you said 10.?
10.21.
21.
Is the list of parks in the resolution?
Yes, it is. The addresses as well as the park names themselves. The next agenda item number is 10.22, resolution number 23545, authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement with the Police Activity League of Jersey City, otherwise known as the JCPAL, to do a roof repair on the facility that received damage last year. The next agenda item number is 10.23, authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement with Barrow Mansion to construct ADA upgrades at their facilities. And that's resolution number 23546. And the final agenda number is 10.24, resolution number 23547, authorizing the execution of a subrecipient agreement with St. Joseph's School for the Blind to construct security improvements at their facilities.
Any questions?
So going back to 1022 for the Police Athletic League, what is the scope of that work?
Yes, so the Police Activities League of Jersey City, their facility underwent a lot of storm damage last summer. They reached out to our office, I want to say in like September, that was prior to me coming into the office, and have been trying to figure out a grant program that would allow them to repair the roof. We started working on it in December, understanding if it was eligible or not. There was severe damage at the northwest corner of the roof that ended up putting a huge hole into their top programming area, rendering it not usable for children to enter the facility to be able to use that space. This would repair the roof and also future-proof it to waterproof it on the top. And then there's a 10-year extended warranty on top of that. Make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Next, Ms. Hill.
Morning, Council. I'll be doing 2 agenda items today. The first one is 10.15, resolution number 23538. This resolution is to authorize program award contracts to the Community Services Block Grant, which runs through January 1st, 2023 to December 2023. It helps 17 nonprofit organizations, and our initial allocation will be about $342,611, which approximated a total number at the end of the year of $964,360.
Any questions? Next.
I do have one question.
Oh, sorry.
I think in the past, and I apologize because as I'm just looking through the resolution here, we've just been able to compare how much was given in a prior year to how much is being allocated this year. Are you able to provide that for us?
I can, but with this total number, it's really similar to last year. They've given us the same allocation from last year.
Okay, and basically just want to make sure that, just I want to see if any of the recipients has changed substantially.
Actually, these specific participants is probably only one that changed from the year prior.
Oh, and which one is that?
I believe it is. We used to have one that was called Hudson Latino Foundation, which they would receive 905,000,
Okay.
and we extracted that number and added it to HHS.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Next.
The next agenda item is 10.20, which is resolution number 23543. And this resolution is to execute a subrecipient agreement with the City of Jersey City and the Health and Human Services for their congregate meals program, which we are allocating about $212,222.
Any questions? None, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Director Flanagan.
Morning, Council. I'm here for two items. 10.6, a resolution appointing Yamiel Bosley as a member of the Jersey City Immigrant Affairs Committee. Yamali is replacing Celia, who term has expired. 1019, Resolution 23542. It's a resolution authorizing the city HHS to accept a 2023 Child-Led Prevention Program Grant Award from the State Department of Health.
Any questions? Thank you, Director. Next, we're going to call back up Director McLaughlin.
Backup. Okay.
We missed one item.
Council members, I am back on the first reading for ordinance in item 3.2, which is a first reading of ordinance 23-074. This is an ordinance to amend the portion of the city code, chapter 239, that specifically deals with parks and farmers markets. For those of you who have farmers markets operating in parks in your ward, you may be familiar that some farmers markets have vendors who might keep their trucks nearby their farm stand, and then some people don't. And in some parks that's permitted, and in some parks it's not. Sometimes the police are on top of that, sometimes they're not. So we are just addressing that and trying to be realistic about the operational needs of these farm vendors at the farmers markets, and to specifically carve out an exception for parking on site only for the farmers markets and select vendors. So what we have done in partnership with public safety and the council members for various areas is we've done one by one carve outs, which is challenging for cultural affairs, challenging for the police. So we're streamlining here and being direct. What this ordinance change would allow is allow the Division of Parks and or the director and or a designee within the Division of Parks to identify an appropriate area for a specific number of vehicles connected to the vendors at the farmers market, specific times that the parking could happen, and it also still allows within the ordinance change enforcement by the police department. The point here is that the vendors that, again, it's not all of them. At Van Voorst, I believe there are 3 vehicles that permission was carved out to allow 3 vehicles to be on site in places they've already been for the past 10 years. Hamilton Park is similarly looking to carve out locations for a few select identified vehicles that are associated with vendors. They will only be on site for the farmers market, and they will be guided off site at the conclusion of the farmers market by the parks group or the parks partner with that farmers market.
I have a lot of vehicles that do park at Riverview, and it was part of the design that happened, in 2020 to allow them to park. Now, is this going to reduce the amount of parking, or is it going to maintain the parking but have designated spots that people are allowed? Like, is it going to make it more organized, or are we like, because the concern was brought to me like maybe a few months ago that someone said, oh, we're trying to move all the parked cars out of the park for the farmer's market, and that would make it difficult.
Well, Councilman, I'm not sure what specific area at Riverview is used for parking, where cars are parked or vehicles are parking during the farmer's market. So forgive me, I am not uniquely familiar with that site and the vendors that pull up there. But I would submit that based on the way the ordinance currently reads, if folks are parking somewhere on the park property during the farmer's market because it's convenient and it makes sense for the produce or their items to be restocked on the table. First of all, that's actually not allowed by the ordinance as it currently reads. And the way that we are trying to change this ordinance would directly address that and make it something that we could control, we could be specific about. So the intention is not to have, if there's 15 vendors, it's not to have 15 cars lined up parked in a park. A park is not a parking lot. But for the specifically for the farmers market, where there's a limited amount of items that are placed out and they often need to refill from their vans or their trucks. And in Jersey City, that truck or van might be parked 5 blocks away. So it's impacting the timing of the vendors, the startups. So it would not, the intention is not to move parked vehicles. The intention is perhaps instead of taking up 3 or 4 residential spots in street parking, that the 3 or 4 vehicles that are associated with these individual farmers markets could just be there, be where they need to be for that time, and then leave the property.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answers the question, Councilman, but I hope it does.
Okay.
Director, while you're here, the ECD presented the grant for the repairs at the parks.
Yes.
You don't have to go through the list now, but are you able to just send us an update on, for those 21 parks, what's planned?
I sure can, Councilman. And for many of them, I've actually been in front of the
Ready,
council for various items, but the general, and I mean, I think I have a pretty good brain handle on it. We are performing upgrades on 3 different splash pads that have been just, left behind. We rebuilt all the pitching mounds on the high school competition fields. We're going to be doing the same shortly on the Little League fields. We fixed 2 slides that had broken parts. Big items that we've replaced. We are in the process of replacing the safety surface at Hamilton Park. Stevens Avenue Park is next on that. Janet Moore up in the Heights is going to get a new safety surface. Those are the big ones I can think of right now. We were able to acquire some very heavy commercial grade soccer goals because those things are pretty expensive and our community is not the most gentle on recreational equipment. So that's something we were able to do. We were able to back up those so that we have a fix there. We are replacing the snap court surface at Lena Edwards Park and as well making fixes to not only the snap court surface at Bayside, but also to the underlying asphalt there. So these are a lot of projects that would not usually be housed in parks. Usually we're trying to pick up garbage and keep them looking the way they were yesterday. But this was a really unique opportunity in partnership with DCD to do some real improvements in places that perhaps were not prioritized fully by the city, but certainly need to be prioritized for their maintenance and for the constituents that rely on them. I can send a list over, Councilman, and share with everybody if that's helpful. Although I understand that Mr. Spires said it is attached and I haven't looked at it, but it probably is oh, he's gone. I was going to give myself a compliment and say it was probably a very thorough Excel spreadsheet that has all the details in it. But I'm happy to resend that out, Councilman.
Lucinda, I'm glad you came back because it slipped my mind earlier. So of the 400 registered camp participants, how many are LMI?
So I don't have that specific number, and forgive me, as I walked in and I thought, oh, I should have that number, which is how I then went through and pulled out the 402 by adding up registrants. I believe yesterday that we had a handful of LMI scholarships that were still available. And just, I know over the weekend, I know on Friday, we had a few more applicants enroll for camp. So I can also report out to you, Councilman, and to Councilman Ridley on any monies outstanding in that donation to offset and scholarship the camp fee for low to moderate income families.
That's it, Sean.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Director. Next will be Director Patel. God bless.
Hello, council members. I'm here to represent a resolution that's actually not on the agenda due to a glitch in iCompass, but it's per my conversations with Councilman Solomon. It's a resolution to reject one bid that we received in relation to a park project, which is 16 park improvements. The reason for rejecting the bid is that this is standard practice. Anytime we only get one bidder, we typically don't award the contract because it's usually not competitive. We like to put it back out and get multiple bidders to try to get the most competitive price possible and to make sure that the entire scope of services that we're looking to cover through a bid is in fact covered by the contractors. So that's the resolution. We're hoping for approval at this meeting so that we can put it back out quickly and then hopefully rebid and try to award at the August council meeting.
Any questions? So council members, just to keep in mind, we'll be adding this to the agenda as a late item, and that requires 6 votes. Thank you, Director. Just wanted to let you guys know. All right, I'm going to take it from the top. First reading ordinances, item 3.1, City Ordinance 23-073 is an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 160 Fees and Charges, Section 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the Jersey City, to include an exemption for owner-occupied residential structures containing 4 or fewer units.
This is the amendment to the development fee ordinance that we discussed in June.
Items 3.2 through 3.4 are touched on earlier. On to our second reading ordinances. Item 4.1 was touched on early and noted that we will be carrying that to the next meeting. Next, item 4.2, City Ordinance 23-065 is an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of Block 11611, Lot 1.02, more commonly known as street address of 335 Washington Street from 335 Washington Realty LLC.
Sean, if I could just.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So, for this item, council, we're just waiting on some finalized environmental reports. So if we have those for Wednesday, we're easy to proceed. If not, I might ask the council to just hold the public hearing and then carry it for one meeting after that. But I'll give an update tomorrow, either way.
Thank you. Okay, next, item 4.3, City Ordinance 23-066 is an ordinance amending Chapter 321 Trees of the Municipal Code of the City of Jersey City. Next, item 4.4, City Ordinance 23-067 is an ordinance supplementing Chapter 332, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking, Standing, Stopping, amending Section 332-22, Parking Prohibited at all times, and Section 332-24, No Parking Certain Hours, or Marin Boulevard. Item 4.5, City Ordinance 23-068, an ordinance supplementing Chapter 332, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 332-9, Stop intersections to designate Congress Street and Hancock Avenue as a multi-way stop control. Item 4.6, City Ordinance 23-069 is an ordinance supplementing Chapter 332, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Parking, Standing, Stopping, amending Section 332-22, Parking Prohibited at all times, and Section 332-24, Parking Prohibited certain hours at the Waldorf School, 110 First Street, and the Iglesias de Dios, 180 Hopkins Avenue. Item 4.7 was touched on earlier. And item 4.8, City Ordinance 23-071 is an ordinance amending Chapter A 352, enabling ordinance of the Jersey City Municipal Code for the renaming of Sycamore Road east of McGovern Park and Custer Avenue to Gates Avenue to Stanfield Lane. Next, we will be conducting a public hearing on the 2023-2024 Journal Square Special Improvement District and assessment roll and budget. Next, after that, we'll be conducting a public hearing on the calendar year 2023 municipal budget amendment.
That's a quick question there. When are we intending to vote in the final budget?
We'll have it for the next meeting, council.
Well, sorry.
At the next council meeting, August meeting.
Oh, we're not gonna do a special meeting to pass it?
We could do a special meeting. Yeah. It was an attendance thing, so we just wanted to make sure we have it right. But
Yeah, I mean-
we could definitely schedule something with the clerk. Yeah, if the council's amendable to that. As early as next week, just go through the advertising.
Okay, next, we'll have our public hearing, regular public hearing. We have 7 speakers as we speak. Next, petitions and communications. Any questions or comments on items 6.1 through 6.29? Hearing none. Office communications, items 7.1 through 7.3. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Next, report of directors, 8.1 through 8.6. Any questions or comments? And we have our meeting claims and to the resolutions. Item 10.1 was touched on earlier. Item 10.2, resolution 23-525 is a resolution amending professional service contract with Will Clothes and Company for LLC for providing accounting and advisory services. Excuse me, item 10.3, resolution 23-526 is a resolution of the municipal council honoring Julia Santana for demonstrating exceptional bravery and heroism in saving her sister from drowning. Item 10.4, resolution 23-527 is a resolution reappointing Darrell G. Laval as a member of the Jersey City Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. Item 10.5, resolution 23-528 is a resolution approving the reappointment of Joe Harkins to the Jersey City Arts and Culture Trust Fund Committee. Item 10.6 was touched on earlier. Item 10.7, resolution 23-530 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Jersey City directing the planning board to prepare an amendment or revision to the NJCU West Campus redevelopment plan.
Sorry, and is there any more information on this one? At the time didn't cover it, did she?
I was just going to say, it's a review to see how it triggers the IZO, but I don't know if the council.
Right, so there have been some changes with the plan itself because the college was not able to make good on the Performing Arts Center. We're working with them to create another set of community benefits packages, but we wanted to make sure that was ever going to move forward. We knew one way or another, if anything, would trigger the IZO here.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, item 10.8, resolution 23-531 is a resolution of the municipal council supporting the protection of Oprah, the principle of transparent government, and expressing opposition to New Jersey Assembly Bills A5613, A5614, A5615, and A5616. Sorry about that.
We also thought about naming this the Keep Sean Gallagher Busy Bill.
Always appreciate you keeping me on my toes and staff. Item 10.9, City Resolution 23-532 is a resolution authorizing the City of Jersey City to accept a gift of a metal plaque from Lafayette Trail Incorporated commemorating Marcus D. Lafayette 1824 visit to Jersey City. Items 10.10 through 10.15 were touched on earlier. Item 10.16, resolution 23-539 is a resolution introducing and approving the 2023-2024 budget of the West Side Avenue Special Improvement District, directing the city clerk to publicly advertise the budget and schedule a public hearing, and 3, directing the tax assessor to prepare an assessment roll for the properties within the district based upon the budget. Item 10.17, resolution 23-540 is a resolution accepting the 2023-2024 assessment roll of the Journal Square Special Improvement District of the City of Jersey City. Next, item 10.18, resolution 23-541 is a resolution adopting and ratifying the 2023-2024 budget of the Journal Square Special Improvement District of the City of Jersey City. Items 10.19 through 10.28 were touched on earlier. Next, item 10.29, resolution 23-552 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of block 3702, lot 22, 117 Hutton Street for the purchase price of $925,000.
Why are we purchasing this property, Sean?
It's for the North District, right?
We really need a new North District. The one we have is not.
It's still the emergency, well,
With the councilman on this, this is for the property that would create two egresses out of the new district. So currently it's a vacant lot and then an adjacent lot that we're going to use for a side entrance and exit for the police personnel. So this will be an amendment to the original proposed plan, but it's something that we communicated with the councilman on, and it'll be beneficial for traffic in the area.
It's a total waste of money.
John, this property was just sold for $525,000 a couple months ago. And then subsequently, we're turning around purchasing it for $925,000. I know initially when we had this conversation about purchasing this property, so were we ever in contact with the original landowner? Because for me, it looks a little problematic that we were essentially attempting to purchase this and then it's sold for $525,000. And then now we're purchasing it for $925,000, which is $400 differential.
Yeah, Councilman, I wasn't aware of the $500,000, but we'll do a review between now and Wednesday and discuss with you. But for the city to purchase it, we have to purchase it at its highest and best use. That's to the landowner. So we just have to check what the property was appraised for the $500,000. It may have just been an abandoned property or vacant property where we have to buy in good faith that it's worth what could be built on it, so to speak, even though we're going to use it for a police facility.
Looking at the financial condition of the city, do we really need to spend this much money?
it's gonna cause a ton of traffic if we don't. You're gonna kill the residents in Ward D. Like, they need a way to get in and get out. So.
Just for the record, we'll make sure we provide additional information on that $500,000 prior to Wednesday.
Okay. Next, item 10.30, resolution 23-553 is a resolution awarding contract to Municode Civic Plus Corporation to provide codification services for the Jersey City Municipal Code. This is a contract renewal for Municode Civic Plus for the codification services that they provide for my office for the online code book. Next, item 10.31, resolution 23-554 is a resolution authorizing the settlement of a dispute between the Municipal Group and the City of Jersey City. And last but not least, we touched on it earlier, item 10.32 will be number resolution 23-555 is a resolution rejecting the sole bid received by the City of Jersey City on July 6, 2023 for a contract known as the 16th Street Park Renovation Project number 2021-028, and that will be a late item.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn at 11:16 a.m. by Councilperson.
I withdraw the motion. Hold on.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
We have to discuss the meeting.
Yeah.
Before we adjourn.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So before we make that motion to adjourn, I'm gonna ask you for a new one. So as we said earlier in the meeting, we are gonna have to select a presiding officer to conduct the municipal council meeting on Wednesday. I cannot do that myself as a presiding officer because I am the clerk and I'm not an elected position. I'm an appointed position. And we do need a presiding officer in order to sign off on the second reading ordinances and all resolutions that are approved and adopted by the municipal council. So what I would need during the council meeting in the beginning of the meeting is a motion to nominate one of the council members and a second, and then a simple majority vote, and then we can proceed with the meeting. So again,
Aye for Amy.
so council members, if you wish to nominate Amy, you can do so. But again, common practice used to be, it would be the next council person at large, but you guys can nominate any member of the council. No offense to Councilperson DeGise whatsoever.
Can we do Rich? I'd like to do Rich.
I'm going to just repeat what I said, guys.
Rich.
You know, you can nominate whoever you want. I just need a second and then an affirmative vote. All right, are we clear on that? And we're not going to have like a 20-minute debate, right? During the meeting, we're going to just select somebody and we're going to go move forward.
I'd debate for Rich.
All right. You know what? With that being said, can I have a
Motion to
motion to adjourn
Oh,
at 11:18? Motion made by Councilperson DeGise, seconded. I'm going to give it to Councilperson Saleh because he made the initial motion. On a motion to adjourn at 11:18 a.m., all council members present, please say aye. By acclamation. We are out of here at 11:18 a.m. Thank you so much, members here and everyone watching at home. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work. Have a great day and stay safe.